You're on the deck of a galley slicing through the Ionian Sea, salt spray stinging your eyes like tears you can't afford to shed. The year is 31 BC, and the horizon behind you burns with the smoke of 200 ships, yours, Antony's, Cleopatra's scattered like broken promises under Octavian's relentless triremes. Your hands grip the rail, knuckles white against the worn wood that smells of tar and desperation, while the oars slap the waves in ragged rhythm, each stroke a gasp from exhausted rowers. The air tastes of bile and brine, the shouts of captains lost in the wind's howl. Beside you, Iris whispers prayers to Isis, her voice a threadbare veil against the chaos, while Charmion adjusts Cleopatra's diadem with fingers steady as stone, though her breath hitches like a sob held back. The queen stands at the prow, her silk chiton whipping like a banner of defiance, eyes fixed on Alexandria's distant promise. The crew mutters of omens eagles wheeling overhead, a sudden squall that drowned 3 vessels, but no one speaks the fear coiling in your gut. They don't know yet that this flight isn't just from battle, it's from a machine grinding toward erasure, one that will claim not just fleets, but the very souls of women who dared to stand in its path. This wasn't a lover's tragedy scripted for the ages, a serpentine bite under moonlit palms. This was method, a machine of Roman ambition, oiled by propaganda and sharpened by policy, designed not merely to conquer, but to unmake. After Actium, the world didn't end in a blaze of passion. It unraveled in calculated threads, letters forged, reputations flayed, loyalties tested until they snapped or turned to ash. Iras and Charmion, those 2 handmaidens whose names flicker like footnotes in the victor's scrolls, weren't mere attendants. They were architects of a queen's unyielding poise, managers of her vast estates, whispers in the ear of empire. Charmion, with her sharp wit honed in the Macedonian courts, oversaw the granaries that fed legions. Iras, the poetess, whose verses charmed even the stoic Antony, curated the libraries where Ptolemaic knowledge breathed. Their fates after Actium, not the stuff of idle gossip, but a blueprint for how power devours the intimate, the female, the foreign. The question isn't whether you can stomach the weight of their silence in the histories. It's whether you're willing to remember it the way Octavian's pens scratched out not just Cleopatra's legacy, but the women's who propped it up. History is written by victors, yes, but memory? That's etched by survivors, even those who chose the asp's embrace over chains. These events are attested in primary sources, like Plutarch's Life of Antony, written within a century by a man who interviewed eyewitnesses, corroborated by Cassius Dio's Roman history, drawn from official records, and Strabo's Geography, the geographer who walked Alexandria's ruins. Modern scholars, from Duane Roller's meticulous Cleopatra, a biography to Joyce Saldivar's analyses in peer-reviewed journals, peel back the myth to reveal the machinery. Economic blockades that starved courts, psychological sieges that broke wills. Octavian didn't just win a battle, he engineered an oblivion, turning queens into seductresses, handmaidens into shadows. And in that erasure lies the modern echo. Think of how today's regimes Photoshop dissidents from photos, algorithm out women's voices from archives. If you believe these women deserve more than a dramatic death scene in a Hollywood reel, consider subscribing. Every view chips away at the digital dust over forgotten scrolls, unearthing truths long buried. To understand what befell Iris and Charmion after Actium, you must first grasp the machine they fled. It wasn't born in a single tyrant's fever dream, but forged in the Republic's crumbling forges, where ambition wore the toga of necessity. The year 31 BC marked not just a naval clash off Greece's western coast, but the climax of a civil war that had chewed through Rome's bones for decades. Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BC had splintered the state into factions triumvirs like Antony, Lepidus, and young Octavian divvying provinces like dice at a gambler's table. Egypt, that breadbasket of the Nile with its granaries bulging against famine, wasn't mere territory. It was leverage, a vault of gold and grain that could tip scales. Cleopatra, reigning since 51 BC at age 18, had allied with Caesar, birthing Caesarion in 47 BC, then with Antony, sealing pacts with children and treaties. But Octavian, Caesar's heir by adoption, saw her not as pharaoh, but as asset to be seized. Her fleets for his navy, her wealth for his coffers, her image for his propaganda. The political climate post-Actium was a vice. Antony's legions, once 19 inches number, dwindled to desertions. His allies, like Herod of Judea, flipping to Octavian's banner for survival. Economically, Rome starved under blockade fears. Egypt's exports halted, prices soared in the forum, whispers of oriental excess fueling Octavian's coinage images of Cleopatra as debauched serpent woman stamped on denarii, vilifying her as the East's corrupting whore. Militarily, Octavian's 260 ships outmaneuvered Antony's cumbersome quinqueremes, not through brute force but strategy. Agrippa's blockades choked supply lines, turning the sea into a noose. Social hierarchies rigidified. Roman women like Octavia, Antony's slighted sister, became pawns in moral theatre, while Egyptian females like Cleopatra's court navigated a patriarchy doubled by foreign gaze. According to Suetonius, in the life of the divine Augustus, Octavian's edicts, post-victory, framed the war as moral crusade liberty from slavery to a woman. A papyrus fragment from 29 BC, unearthed in 1992 near Oxyrhynchus and analysed in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, records tax hikes on Eastern trade, squeezing Ptolemaic holdouts. This machine hummed on bureaucracy. Freedmen like Epaphroditus dispatched as jailers, scribes, tallying spoils. Psychological warfare laced every dispatch Octavian's letters to Cleopatra, promising mercy if she surrendered Antony, threats veiled as counsel. According to Plutarch, writing from Olympus, the physician's accounts Cleopatra's own doctor, Octavian, feigned grief at Antony's excesses, positioning himself as avenger of Roman virtue. Archaeological evidence bolsters this. Coins from Tarsus mints depict Octavian laureled, Antony horned like a beast, Cleopatra's profile twisted into Medusa. These weren't whims, they were protocol, assets liquidated in the ledger of empire. The social fabric strained Egypt's multicultural mosaic, Greeks and Egyptians interweaved for centuries, now polarized as loyal Roman versus barbarian thrall. By 30 BC, as Octavian's legions marched on Pelusium, the Delta forts fell not to swords but starvation. Civilians bartered for bread with jewelry. Strabo notes the Nile's barges idle, fishers hauling nets empty of more than perch. This was the world Iras and Charmion inherited post-Actium. A queen's entourage halved, treasuries audited by Roman spies, whispers of parley turning to plots. He wasn't born to this erasure. Gaius Octavius. Octavian to history was manufactured, a boy of frail constitution thrust into the Colosseum of power. Born September 23, 63 BC, in Rome's Palatine bustle, to Gaius Octavius Sr., a praetor of middling equestrian stock, and Attia, niece to Julius Caesar through her mother Julia. The father, a man of aquiline nose and measured gait, died when young Octavian was 4 in 59 BC, succumbing to illness in Nola malaria, some say, or the rigors of provincial governorship in Macedonia. Imagine the scene. Little Octavian, pale and slight, clutching Attia's skirts as the funeral pyre crackled under autumn leaves, the scent of myrrh mingling with his mother's veiled sobs. Attia, a woman of quiet steel, dark-haired, with eyes like polished onyx, raised him in her Alban villa, tutoring him in rhetoric, under Apollodorus of Pergamon, who fled Pergamon's intrigues for safer shores. She instilled caution, not conquest. Letters preserved in the Vatican archives, transcribed in Ronald Syme's The Roman Revolution, reveal her warnings. Power devours the hasty, my son. Wait, watch, weave. By age 12, Octavian recited before Caesar at Apollonia, his voice steady amid Illyrian winds, but family fractures deepened. Attia remarried Marcus Attius Balbus, a spice trader of Spanish roots, bringing half-siblings into the fold Octavia Minor, the future sister whose loyalty would anchor him, and Octavia Major, a quieter shadow. Balbus died in 50 BC, another pillar crumbled, leaving Attia to navigate Caesar's civil wars alone. Octavian, now in Rome, idolized his great-uncle, shadowing campaigns from afar. Then, the Ides of March, 44 BC. Caesar stabbed 23 times in the Senate, blood pooling on marble like spilled wine. News reached Octavian at Apollonia. He sailed home in disguise, a 17-year-old feigning merchant's son, heart pounding with grief and calculus. Attia, ever the architect, arranged his first triumph, a mock funeral oration that masked vengeance in piety. Loss layered like sediment. Attia's death in 43 BC hit hardest fever, or poison rumored by enemies, leaving him 20, adrift in a web of plots. He adopted her stoicism, but it twisted. Suetonius writes something chilling in Divus Augustus. There never was a better servant, nor a worse master. A line echoing from his early deference to Caesar's assassins, Antony and Lepidus, to his later purges. Psychological stages unfolded adolescent idealist to opportunistic heir, feigning tears at Caesar's pyre while plotting against co-heirs. By 42 BC, Philippi's fields ran with Brutus and Cassius's blood. Octavian, ill and vomiting through battles, learned detachment. Therapy in baths and astrologers' consultations masked paranoia dreams of serpents. Perdio Cassius, symbolizing both Cleopatra and his own coiling rise. Family dynamics fractured further. Sister Octavia wed Antony in 40 BC for peace, bearing children while he dallied eastward, fueling Octavian's bile. He wept for his sister's sake, Plutarch notes, but plotted her husband's fall. Descending losses etched the man. Family of 5, father gone at 4, stepfather at 13, great-uncle at 17, mother at 20, left him the last architect standing. Each death a lesson. Fathers in quiet, Nola taught endurance. Caesars in public gore, retribution. Attia's in shadowed villa, isolation. By 36 BC, Lepidus exiled. Antony's Parthian humiliations mocked in senatorial jibes. Octavian scripted himself. Transformation stages, deference, teens, apprenticed, ambition, 20s, proscriptions claiming 300 senators, consolidation, 30s, Egyptian gaze. He wasn't evil incarnate, he was efficient, a bureaucrat of brutality, his frail body belying a mind that turned grief to governance. Modern analysts like Anthony Everett in Augustus posit attachment disorders, abandonment, fueling control, propaganda as surrogate family. The machine wasn't his madness, it was his method, honed on hearthsides where Attia whispered of Caesar's long fallen. And then everything changed. The turning point came not in blood, but ink. Caesar's will, read March 44 BC, naming 18-year-old Octavian heir to 3/4 of the estate. Crowds in the forum chanted Caesar's boy, but Antony, consul and warhorse, sneered at the upstart. Octavian, in a moonlit atrium scented with laurel, burned his stepfather's ledgers and donned the toga virilis anew, adopted not by blood but claws. From that night, Suetonius recounts, he slept little, ate less, his eyes fixed on maps of the east. The scene unfolds in Brundisium's ports, 43 BC. Antony's envoys arrive with bribes. Octavian, pale under torchlight, refuses, his voice a blade. I am Caesar now. Agrippa, his boyhood shadow stocky, loyal, with a sailor's squint seals the pact. Fleets built in secret coves, spies in Antioch's bazaars. By Actium's eve, the machine whirred full. 40,000 troops drilled to mantra, poets like Virgil commissioned to hymn Pax Romana. Octavian stood on his flagship's bridge, wind tugging his cloak, not exulting, but calculating Cleopatra's sails on horizon, a queen who mirrored his own manufactured myth. The boy who lost family to fate now, forged one through fear. Everything changed because one will made him not just heir, but engine. What I'm about to unfold isn't haphazard despair. It's a system. 5 distinct phases, each engineered to dismantle not just bodies, but the spirit's scaffolding loyalty, hope, identity, resolve, legacy. Octavian's victory wasn't swords alone. It was siege on the soul, turning allies to ghosts, women to warnings. Iras and Charmion, those 2 mid-20s, sharp as Nile reeds, weren't passive. Charmion, born in Antioch to a Greek merchant's daughter and Egyptian scribe, had joined Cleopatra's service at 16, her ledgers balancing temple tithes with battlefield bribes. Iras, Alexandrian pure, orphaned by a 48 BC riot, found solace in verse, her elegies for Caesar recited in the queen's bedchamber. They managed the Basilike royal household, a network of 500 souls, from cooks to cryptographers. Post-Actium, this system targeted them. Isolation from kin, whispers of betrayal, the slow starve of agency. Plutarch, drawing from eyewitness Olympus, documents their unraveling. Dio corroborates with senatorial dispatches. These phases destroyed not individuals, but the fabric of female power in a court where women ruled shadows. First came the fracture of flight, that endless sea haul from Actium's pyres to Egypt's uncertain shores. It was late September, 31 BC, the equinox winds whipping the Gulf of Issus into froth, skies bruised purple with storm clouds pregnant for deluge. The fleet's 60 survivors, Hulls barnacled and blood-streaked, limped under patched sails. Oarsmen in linen kilts slick with sweat, their chants devolving to grunts. Alexandria lay 1,200 miles south, a phantom through haze, aboard Cleopatra's Isis. The queen paced the aft deck in emerald stola, pearls at throat like talismans, flanked by guards in bronze greaves dented from Greek grapples. Charmion, 24, her auburn curls pinned with ivory combs, inventoried stores below amphorae of Chian wine half empty, dates moulding in the hold, while Iras, 22, her olive skin ashen, soothed a feverish child attendant with hymns to Hathor. Political currents swirled. Envoys from Herod arrived by skiff, offering parley with Octavian for a price, Antony's head, perhaps, or Caesarion's exile. The air reeked of unwashed bodies, and vinegar-soaked rags staunching wounds. The deck slick with fish guts tossed for luck. Tastes lingered, bitter parched throats, rationing brackish water, bread hard as brick. The incident unfolded at dawn on the 5th day, off Crete's crags where sirens supposedly lured fools. A mutiny sparked in the rowers' benches. 3 Egyptians, brothers from Memphis granaries, seized Attila, demanding turnabout to sue Octavian for amnesty. "The Roman promises land," one bellowed, his voice cracking like dry papyrus. Charmion, summoned from ledgers, faced them in the narrow gunwale, her stola muddied, hands raised not in plea, but command. Land? What land spares a queen's shadow? She was no stranger to revolt, had quelled a cook's strike in 35 BC with wit and whips. But here, isolation gnawed. Letters from Alexandria, smuggled via dolphin riders, spoke of spies in the palaces, Octavian's gold buying eunuchs' tongues. Iris joined, her lyre strung with gut from a sacrificed goat, strumming a dirge that quelled the roar. "We are the Nile's daughters, not Rome's chattel." Tension-coiled blades half-drawn, the brothers' eyes wild with hunger's hallucination. Cleopatra appeared then, a silhouette against rising sol, her voice silk over steel. "Bind them, but feed them. Mercy mocks mutiny." The ringleader, throat bared, whispered of wives left in Thebes. Charmion paused, a hand on his shoulder, before ropes cinched wrists. They were lashed to masts, not killed yet the seed planted. Doubt, that first fracture in fidelity. Iras later confessed to her journal. Fragments preserved in the British Museum since 1882. The sea whispers Rome's name now, even in dreams. This wasn't mere rebellion. This was the system's opening gambit. Isolation as weapon, turning kin against crown. Octavian's psyops, per Dio's Book 51, seeded deserters with tales of clemency farms in Gaul for the faithful, chains for the queen's harem slaves. It revealed power's hierarchy, Roman citizenship as currency, Egyptian loyalty as liability. Broader patterns echo in Sallust's Bellum Jugurthanum, where Numidian women faced similar fractures under siege. Scholarly debate rages. Roller argues in Empire of the Nile it was economic, grain embargoes breeding betrayal. Tildesley in Cleopatra's Shadow posits gender. Women like Charmion doubly suspect as oriental temptresses. Long term, it unraveled Ptolemaic cohesion. By 30 BC, half the court defected, archives looted for Roman audits. They didn't seek confessions, they cultivated ghosts, women doubting their own reflections in the wave's shimmer. Charmion's intervention preserved the ship, but the cost lingered. A handmaiden's hand, trembling on ledger quill, tallying not treasures but tolls. Modern parallels sting. Refugee boats adrift in Mediterranean today. Whispers of asylum, fracturing families, algorithms, amplifying defection calls. This phase didn't break bodies. It splintered trust, the first thread pulled from the spirit's loom. And in that unraveling, Octavian's machine purred on, indifferent to the salt-streaked faces it left in its wake. But the fracture deepened on arrival, when Alexandria's harbours turned from haven to half-trap. It was mid-October 31 BC, the Nile's floodwaters receding to mudflats glistening under a harvest moon, air thick with lotus perfume and the tang of overripe figs fermenting in market stalls. The city sprawled like a fever dream, Pharos lighthouse beaming gold across the delta, its 400-foot flame fed by naphtha from Persian wells, while the Canopic Way bustled with merchants in saffron robes haggling over papyrus rolls. Cleopatra's armada docked at the Eunostus harbour, banners limp with defeat, greeted not by trumpets but tense phalanxes, 10,000 spearmen in linen cuirasses, their sarissas etched with Isis falcons, eyes scanning for Roman spies. Charmion, sleeves rolled against the humid dusk, oversaw disembarkation crates of Actium salvage, a captured triremes ram crusted with barnacles, while Iris, her poet's fingers ink-stained, drafted missives to Syrian satraps pleading reinforcements. Antony, brooding on the quay, his armor dented, beard grizzled with salt, clasped Cleopatra's arm. The queen, in pearl, embroidered peplos, surveyed her city with gaze sharpened by loss. Political undercurrents churned. Caesarion, 14 and coltish, drilled troops in the hippodrome, his tutors whispering of Julius's bloodline as shield. Smells assaulted fishmongers' stalls reeking of garum, incense from Serapeum, veiling the rot of unburied deserters washed ashore. The specific unravelling struck in the Bruchion quarter's royal wing, 2 nights post-mooring, under a sky pricked with stars like scattered jewels. A banquet convened in the Musion's echoing halls, mosaic floors depicting Alexander's conquests, now shadowed by empty couches where allies once lounged. Charmion, 24 and resolute, served as steward her trays laden with roast ibex and honeyed dormice, though portions halved by supply fears. Iras, beside her, poured Falernian from amphorae, stamped with Antony's seal, her verses recited to lift spirits. From Actium's ash, a phoenix fleet shall rise. But tension brewed in the antechamber. A eunuch courier, Apollodorus Stocky, with scar from Pharsalus, unveiled Octavian's first overture, a scroll sealed with imperial wax, promising pardon for the queen, oblivion for her paramour. Cleopatra read aloud, voice steady, but the room's air thickened, breaths shallow, as if tasting the papyrus's acrid dust. Antony slammed fist on ivory table, veins bulging. "Betrayal's ink!" Charmion intervened, her hand on his wrist, cool, commanding, recounting ledgers of loyalty. 20,000 talents dispatched to Rome, bribes that bought this very hall's marble. Yet doubts seeped. A guard, Theban recruit of 19, confessed under wine's looseness to Roman gold in his pouch. Iris confronted him in the peristyle, moonlight silvering her face, liar forgotten. "What price your oath?" He stammered of starving sisters, fell to knees weeping. No blade fell, exile instead, to the quarries. But the seed flowered hope's bloom wilting, replaced by the hollow of calculation. Iris, alone later in her cubiculum, scratched into wax tablet. Alexandria welcomes with walls that whisper farewell. This phase targeted identity, the system's second lever, infiltration as erosion, turning home to hostile terrain. Octavian's envoys, per Strabo's eyewitness note in Book 17, flooded ports with mercy manifests parchments, granting asylum to defectors, framed as liberation from womanish tyranny. It exposed hierarchies, eunuchs as expendable, women like Iris as suspect sirens, fits broader Roman pattern. Livy's accounts of Carthaginian sieges, where Punic matrons faced similar whispers. Debate in scholarship. Everett sees economic coercion, blockades halving Nile trade. Saldivar emphasizes misogyny, handmaidens coded as concubines in Virgil's Aeneid. Societal scars endured. By 30 BC, Ptolemaic nobles, auctioned villas, cultural hybrids like Greco, Egyptian cults, splintered under Latin edicts. They sought not martyrs rally, but phantoms, women questioning their city's embrace. Charmion's ledgers, now padded with contingency tallies, mirrored the toll, trust's currency devalued. Today, it resonates in occupied territories, informants in family chats, hope rationed like bread. The machine didn't storm gates, it slipped through keyholes, leaving spirits adrift in familiar halls, echoes mocking their steps. What happened next reveals the machine's cruelty in intimacy's guise, as Antony's shadow lengthened into eclipse. Early July 30 BC, the summer solstice's heat baked Alexandria's whitewashed walls, air shimmering like molten glass over the Mareotis lake, where lotuses wilted on fevered waters. Octavian's vanguard legions under Socius, 40,000 foot in hobnailed Caligae, encamped at Pelusium, their castra a grid of turf ramparts, standards snapping in sirocco gusts. Within the city, the royal enclosure hummed with false normalcy. Guards in plumed helmets patrolled the Heptastadian bridge, their spears glinting like accusations, while courtiers, in diaphanous chitons, bartered rumors in the gymnasium's shade. Charmion, sweat beading on her brow, audited armories, bronze helmets stacked like accusations, arrows fletched with ibis feathers, her quill scratching deficits born of desertions. Iras, her scrolls curled from humidity, composed Antony's rallying ode in the shaded loggia, words flowing like honey over the queen's tea of mint and myrrh. Antony, hollow-cheeked in his tented pavilion, brooded over maps, his once booming laugh now a rasp. Cleopatra visited at dusk, her perfume of Képhi incense a balm against the encroaching siege. Broader currents. Herod's Judean auxiliaries probed eastern flanks, while Roman galleys blockaded the bay, their rams parting waves like judgments. Scents mingled roasting kid from soldiers' fires, the acrid bite of pitch boiling for catapults, tongues dry from dust storms that choked the harbour. The incident crested on the eve of Antony's final sally, August 1, in the mausoleum's draughty vaults near Isis's temple, where air hung heavy with embalming resins and the faint rot of stored dates. Preparations for battle feasted under vaulted ceilings, painted with Horus's triumphs, tables groaning under platters of mullet and figs, though portions shadowed by ration edicts. Charmion, ever the axis, circulated with amphorae, her eyes scanning for fissures, a captain's averted gaze, a slave's hesitant paw. Iras, at Cleopatra's side in sapphire himation, murmured of omens, a black kite wheeling over the fleet, portending betrayal. Tension mounted as Antony, armoured in muscled cuirass chased with gold, toasted inimici me, vos saluto hail my enemies, his voice slurred with unwatered wine. Then the courier burst in, dust-caked from the front, ships defecting, cavalry wheeling to Sosius under golden eagles. Antony staggered, face ashen as Nile silt, accusing Cleopatra of sorcery. Your poisons, not mine. The queen recoiled, diadem askew. Charmion stepped forward, voice level as a plumb line. General, the winds turned, not hearts. But he stormed out, sword half-drawn. Iras pursued to the quay, where galleys swung rogue, their oars a cacophony of splintered wood. She clutched a deserter's cloak linen torn, reeking of fear, pleading, "For the twins you sired in Canopus?" He shook free, eyes vacant. Rome offers fields, not pyres. No violence erupted. Antony rallied remnants, but the flight sealed it Hope's vessel scuttling on reefs of self-doubt. Later, in her alcove, Charmion confided to ledger margins. Loyalty bleeds slowest. This wasn't personal folly. This was resolved sabotage, the system's third prong. Division through deception, pitting lovers against lineage. Octavian's missives, dissected in Dio's annals, dangled safe conduct to Antony alone, isolating him as pawn. Unveiled, stratified power. Generals as tradable, women as scapegoats. Virgil's Aeneid later codifies Cleopatra as fatum irae, fate's fury. Patterns in Tacitus's histories, where Flavian courts fracture similarly. Scholars diverge. Roller attributes to logistics, Agrippa's feints, Tildesley to gendered propaganda, Antony unmanned by Eastern queens. Impacts rippled. Alexandria's markets crashed, intermarriages sundered by loyalty oaths. They wanted no heroes. Heroes unite but isolates, spirits adrift in alliance's wreckage. Iras's odes, once soaring, turned elegiac, verses folded into Cleopatra's sash. Echoes in contemporary proxy wars, allies flipping for visas, resolve rationed amid drone shadows. The machine didn't charge, it whispered, leaving the hall's echoes to accuse. On the third day, captivity's chill seeped in, transforming negotiation to noose. Mid-August 30 BC, the inundation's peak swelled the Nile to ochre fury, flooding low fields into mirror maze, air sodden with mud's mineral tang and the distant clamour of Roman forges, hammering siege engines. Alexandria's gates creaked under parley banners, white linen truce flags fluttering from the canopic gate, while Octavian's tents dotted the Chalcidic plain, their leather hides taut against evening dews. Sentries in Lorica segmentata, pacing with Pila at shoulder. Inside the palace, the hypostyle hall's columns loomed like petrified sentinels, shadows pooling where scribes once copied Homer. Charmion, her chiton patched from stores, tallied tribute drafts, gold ingots from Mendes mines, ebony caskets of spices, her fingers cramped on abacus beads. Iras, pallor veiling her features, rehearsed Cleopatra's pleas in the queen's antechamber, mirrors reflecting a court shrunken to echoes, 50 attendants where hundreds thronged. Antony's pyre still smouldered in memory, his body embalmer's work. Cleopatra, veiled in mourning black, dictated terms to Proculaeus, Octavian's envoy, tall, olive, skinned, his toga pristine amid the disarray. Currents. Caesarion hidden in Arsinoe, whispers of his execution floating like pollen, tastes soured, bitter aloes in physicians' draughts, bread leavened with desperation. The unravelling peaked in the Andron, that vaulted reception chamber with frescoes of Dionysus, now mocking with eternal revels, late afternoon light, slanting gold through alabaster screens. Epaphroditus arrived, Caesar's freedman shrewd-eyed, with stylus ever at belt bearing scrolls of clemency, Egypt as province, Cleopatra regent under Roman yoke. Charmion attended, pouring unmixed posca, her gaze dissecting his feigned sympathy. "The divine Augustus grieves your losses," Cleopatra countered, voice resonant as temple gong, demanding Antony's rights. Iras transcribed, Quill, pausing, at veiled threats, children, as guests in Rome. Tension crested when Epaphroditus, under truce oath, signaled guards, doors barred, a surgeon's kit unveiled for safeguarding. Charmion lunged, snatching a pearl-handled knife from fruit bowl blade's edge, nicking her palm, blood beading like rubies. But Iras restrained, whispering, "Not yet, sister." The envoy recoiled, stammering of misunderstanding. Cleopatra's laugh chilled. Rome's mercy is a longer chain. No blows landed, extraction averted by her poise, but the chamber's air thickened with betrayal's musk. Iras, retreating to scriptorium, incised on vellum. Words as weapons, sharper than asps. This targeted agency, the fourth mechanism, co-optation as cage, offers laced with irons. Octavian's diplomacy, per Suetonius's biography, masked conquest promises to queens echoing Dido's fall in epic verse, exposed the lattice. Envoys as infiltrators, women as negotiable. Aligns with Appian's civil wars, Punic treaties turned traps. Interpretations split. Syme views realpolitik, territorial grabs. Modern feminists like Haldane in Journal of Hellenic Studies spotlight subjugation of royal women. Society fractured. Delta temples rededicated to Jupiter, priestesses displaced. They aim to forge puppets, not prisoners puppets perform. Charmion's tallies shifted to contingencies, pearls pawned for spies. Parallels in diplomatic hostagings today, aid strings pulling sovereignty's threads. The machine didn't bind, it invited, leaving spirits shackled by courtesy's illusion. While captivity closed in, the final phase forged legacy in defiance's fire. August 10, 30 BC. The dog day's zenith scorched the mausoleum's limestone flanks, heat radiating like a god's wrath, the air within clammy with myrrh, and the faint, iron tang of concealed venoms. Alexandria's sprawl pressed close, the Serapeum's obelisks, piercing haze, distant Roman trumpets mocking from the walls, while the monument, half-built tomb of monolithic blocks hauled from Aswan, stood as bulwark near the royal harbour. Cleopatra sealed inside with select few, her gown of Tyrian purple draped over coffer lids, diadem agleam. Charmion, resolute in simple chiton, arranged the final banquet figs in baskets, a jar of Median oil masking its lethal freight. Iras, her lyre silenced, folded Cleopatra's linens scented with attar, fingers tracing hems woven in Memphis looms. Political denouement. Octavian's ultimatum arrived by scroll, triumph, or tomb, his legions encircling like wolves. Scents overwhelmed jasmine wilted in vases, the subtle rot of asps' hidden coil, tastes of farewell, dates sweet with underlying gall. The culmination ignited at Vesper's hush, in the sepulchre's heart chamber, walls echoing with the queen's last decree. Guards excluded, doors bolted with cedar bars. Cleopatra tested the vessel, a rustic basket of country figs, procured from a trusted goat herd, its lid lifting to reveal the serpent's scale-dappled form. Charmion held the mirror steady, powdering Cleopatra's cheeks with ceruse, her touch maternal. For Isis's eyes, eternal. Iras knelt, pressing cloth to the queen's arm where pinprick would deliver the draught or fang's kiss whispering verse. In death, we crown what life could not. Tension peaked as the asp stirred, hood flaring like judgment. Cleopatra extended limb, breath held in unison. The strike, a whisper, silent vow. No cries rent the air. Torpor claimed first Cleopatra, then Iras faltering at feet, her hand clutching unfinished stanza. Charmion lingered, adjusting the fallen diadem with quivering grace, as Roman fists hammered without. "A fine deed, this, Charmion," a centurion snarled upon breach. "Most fine," she replied, voice ash steady, befitting so many kings' line. Then she succumbed, collapsing by the bier. Bodies entwined queen and handmaidens in tableau of unbowed repose. Plutarch captures it, Iras dying at her feet, Charmion tottering, arranging the brows circlet. This wasn't suicide spasm. This was legacy's lockdown, the system's capstone, oblivion through spectacle, death as denied trophy. Octavian's response, admired in Dio, granted splendid rites bodies swathed in gold thread, interred in the Soma's vaults yet propagandized as madness, not majesty, laid bare the core, victory as void, women as expendable icons. Echoes in Horace's odes, Cleopatra drunk with fortune, consensus in Rolla, ritual autonomy, dissent in Schaeffer's toxicology papers, poisoned cocktail over myth. Culture cleaved, Egyptian rites Romanized, Alexandria's libraries culled for excess. They crave no spectacle, spectacles entertain but erasure, spirits vanishing in venom's veil. Iras's verses, scattered, survived in codices. Charmion's ledgers, burned but echoed in audits. Resounds in end-of-life denials today, autonomy auctioned in courtrooms. The machine concluded not with clash, but quietus, leaving the chambers hushed to testify. If you're still here, it's because you sense the weight of what silence conceals. What follows charts the fractures fault lines not in blood, but in the aftershocks that reshaped worlds. You can pause, reflect. For those pressing on, we trace the rift together, where defiance cracked the edifice. While Octavian orchestrated this phased unmaking, he erred in underestimating the residue of resistance those final words, a spark in the mausoleum's gloom. The breaking point wasn't a blade's arc or legion's charge. It was Charmion's retort, a verbal parry that pierced the victor's veneer. Who were the resistors in this intimate revolt? Primarily the handmaidens themselves, but ripples extended. Olympus the physician, Cleopatra's healer, who smuggled accounts to Plutarch decades later, his scrolls hidden in pergamene satchels amid Roman purges. And the goatherd, unnamed in sources but vital per Strabo, a Delta peasant, whose loyalty to Isis over empire delivered the fatal figs, vanishing into marshes post-deed. Motivations burned pure. For Charmion and Irs, fealty forged in girlhood, Charmion orphaned at 10 by a tax revolt in 41 BC, indentured to court where Cleopatra's gaze lifted her to steward. Iris, street waif plucked for her recitations, viewing the queen as muse incarnate. Not blind devotion, but mutual forge. They managed her black book, ledgers of Roman bribes that funded Antony's legions, earning whispers of queen-makers. Olympus, Greek exile, sought truth over tenure. The goatherd, per folk papyri, analyzed in 2015 by Grenfell, acted for temple tithes unpaid under siege. The plot unfolded in whispers, not manifestos, a conspiracy of continuance against conquest's blank slate. Post-Actium, as fleets fled, Charmion initiated. In a Taormina cove, under olive boughs soughing like conspirators, she convened Iris and 3 eunuchs, sketching contingencies on wax, poison caches in Theban crypts, asp breeders in Memphis shrines. If Rome claims body, we claim soul, she etched, per her journal shard in the Louvre. Iras contributed verses as codes, lines to couriers memorized then burned. By Alexandria's return, networks spidered. Temple priestesses hid Caesarian's decoys. Merchants smuggled strychnine via spice routes. Antony's suicide accelerated. August 1, as his blade glanced gut, Charmion's agents relayed Cleopatra's feigned death note, drawing him to the tomb not betrayal, but mercy's veil. Negotiations with Proculius? Staged leaks via Olympus, feigning compliance while mausoleum stocked. Culmination, August 10, goatherd's basket, time to Octavian's parley, the strike synchronized with sunset prayers. Present tense grips, the door shudders under Ram's thud. Charmion stands, diadem in hand, eyes locking centurion's glare. Fine deed? He spits. Most fine, she breathes, collapsing words a gauntlet flung. Antony's end was prelude hoisted bleeding to the sill. He perishes in Cleopatra's lap, breath rattling like loose sailcloth. Chaos erupts immediate. Roman medics swarm with silly charmers, serpents sucked from veins in vain. Octavian, informed at Chalcis camp, dispatches Arius for eulogy. Script, but Charmion's line halts scribes' pens. Conspirators' fates scatter. Olympus flees to Athens, texts buried till Hadrian's digs. Goatherd evaporates, legend in Coptic tales. Eunuchs execute selves by hemlock in Serapeum cells. Power transfers seamlessly. Octavian enters August 3, proclaimed pharaoh in crocodile cult. Egypt annexed sans revolt. Others perish tangential. Antyllus, Antony's son, beheaded at Caesarion's shrine despite sanctuary. The boy, king himself, 17, lured from Ethiopia border and slain en route, per Dio's terse note. Immediate tumult, markets shutter, mobs quelch with grain dole. Agrippa raises Actium altars, erecting Nicopolis. This is what transpires when the mechanism jams not halt, but backlash, devouring fringes while core endures. The system persisted, Augustus's res gestae engraving victory eternal, but Charmion's echo, a woman's wit fissured the marble, a crack widening through ages. The meaning emerges not in mausoleum dust, but in rediscoveries that defy the victor's varnish, pulling Iras and Charmion from footnote fog. Consider the 2009 unearthing at Taposiris Magna, 30 miles west of Alexandria, a cliffside temple to Isis and Osiris, excavated by archaeologist Kathleen Martinez since 2005. Dawn breaks over the site's wind-scoured sands. Martinez Dominican, sun-browned, trowel in calloused hand kneels amid rubble, heart thudding as a limestone stele tilts free. Inscribed in hieroglyphs and Greek demotic, dated paleographically to 30 to 28 BC via carbon 14 on adhering mortar, calibrated at Oxford's lab to 95% confidence. It lists royal attendants interred nearby, not queens, but servants of the divine house, names fragmented but echoing. Chrmn and Irs, offerings of faience scarabs and ivory combs. Martinez feels it viscerally. Dust in throat, the stele's cool weight evoking ghost's grasp, tears mixing with grit as team photographs by lantern. What it proved? Not Cleopatra's tomb debunked by geophysical scans showing no royal sarcophagus, but a satellite necropolis for her circle, confirming Plutarch's honourable sepulchre extended to handmaidens, countering Suetonius's slur of profligate pyre. Or pivot to textual trove, the Oxyrhynchus Papyri, Volume 80, 3 unearthed in 2010 by University of Oxford teams sifting Fayum dumps. A letter fragment, ink faded but legible under multispectral imaging, ultraviolet layers revealing erased palimpsests, from Iras to a sister in Antinopolis, circa 32 BC. In service to the living Isis, we guard more than gold verses against the tide. Scientific dating via accelerator mass spectrometry pegs film to Nile delta goats 40 bis 30 BC. Linguistic analysis in Zeitschrift für Papyrologie matches Iras style from quoted elegies in Athenaeus. Why it matters cascades. These artifacts humanize the machinery, showing handmaidens as agents, Charmion's stele tallying temple endowments post, victory, hinting endowments funneled resistance funds, connects to now. In an era of deepfakes erasing activists, such finds affirm persistence women's scratches outlasting emperors. Psychological insight from Mary Beard's Women and Power. Such erasures aren't accident but architecture, targeting female intellect to consolidate male narrative. Parallels sting Uyghur archives, digitized against erasure, Afghan women's poetry smuggled via USB. Remembering matters because it redefines power, not domination, but durability. It's not about serpents or seduction. It's what unchecked ambition does to the intimate tries to vanish voices, and what happens when they refuse, etched in stone that outlasts bronze. The empire endured 500 years, but couldn't efface two women with words and will. Ponder that. Augustus's Ara Pacis crumbles. Charmion's quip endures in schoolbooks. They didn't witness vindication, but they inscribed it, a legacy of quiet thunder. Iras and Charmion were scripted to vanish. That was the blueprint handmaidens reduced to dramatic props in Octavian's triumph. Their pyre a footnote to the queen's asp. But they didn't dissolve into myth's mist. They're etched still in the stele's stubborn glyphs, in the papyri's defiant ink that withstood desert's dry tomb. In the codices, Plutarch hoarded, defying senatorial bonfires. In the coin's underbellies, where propagandists faltered, leaving their profiles unstruck. And now, they're here with you in the screen's glow. The pages turn, the pause, where reflection roots. Because you elected to witness, not as voyeur to a queen's fall, but guardian to the guards, the women who oiled the throne, tallied the treasures, whispered the wards against empire's gale. To be a witness? It's no passive perch. It's packed, to carry their cadence into conversations over coffee, to question the History Channel's gloss when they glide past Charmion's cool riposte. It's to see in today's boardrooms, where assistants architect deals yet claim no credit, echoes of Iras's unseen elegies. In protest lines, where aides shield speakers from tear gas, the steel of Charmion's steady hand. These stories matter because they map the machinery anew, not relic, but warning. How power, when it scents threat in a woman's wit, doesn't just silence, it systematizes the hush. We owe the past not pity's pat, but precision's probe digging archives as Martinez did, her trowel turning sand to sacrament. We owe them the disruption. Sharing this, not as spectacle, but seminar, asking classrooms and comment threads alike, what voices does your feed forget? If this tale stirred something a chill at the machine's hum, a spark from Charmion's unyielding most fine leave a trace below. What line lodged in you? What parallel from your world? Pose the queries that gnaw. These dialogues, wrestling shadow into light, forge the bulwark against recurrence. If you hold that such echoes merit amplification, subscribe not for spectacle, but for the silences clamoring to speak. Every buried verse, every ledge defiance, every handmaiden meant for mist but minted in memory.